was promised for fixing the entire aerospace line never happened. Harvey Coleman stood in front of the engineering department and handed it to someone else like his word meant nothing. I watched him shake Rachel Torres's hand. Watched everyone clap like this made sense, and something inside me went cold. I'm Scott Henderson, 47 years old, and I've been doing precision manufacturing for 15 years. I know when a system's about to fail. I didn't argue, didn't make a scene. I waited until the meeting ended, walked back to my workstation, and typed a 2-line resignation. No drama, just facts and a polite good luck. When I slid the envelope across Harvey's desk, he looked confused, almost annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. He tore it open without thinking. I could hear the paper rip. I could feel my watch band against my wrist. Then his face changed. Confusion turning into panic. Scott, tell me this is a joke. I stood there, hands steady. It's not a joke. He pushed back from his chair, the wheels scraping against the floor. You can't walk out. Not after the Phoenix project. You're the only one who understands the CNC protocols. His voice cracked on the last word, like he just realized he'd said too much. So you do need me. That's not what I said, he snapped. You just need to cool off. You're upset about Rachel, but you can't throw away 15 years over one decision. I held his stare. You made promises you never planned to keep. That's what I'm walking away from. Harvey pressed his palm against the resignation letter like he could stop it from being real. Scott, think about this. Rachel's new. She can't handle your responsibilities yet. The aerospace contracts, I stepped back. I hope it works out for you. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He was finally understanding that the moment he betrayed me was the moment he lost control of everything he thought he owned. I walked out knowing his panic was just the beginning. 10 months before that resignation letter hit Harvey's desk, he stood next to my CNC station with complete confidence. Scott, you're the only engineer I trust with the Phoenix aerospace line, he said. If you can turn this around, the engineering supervisor position is yours. I looked up from the tolerance specifications, stunned. You mean officially mine? Yes, he said without hesitation. This contract is worth $500,000 per quarter. Boeing's breathing down our necks about quality issues. You fix it with 0 defects, and I'll make sure you get the promotion you deserve. The words hit harder than he knew. After losing $80,000 in a failed startup 5 years ago, I needed something solid, something I could count on. The startup had been my shot at independence, a small manufacturing consultancy that went under when a major client pulled out unexpectedly. I'd invested everything, my savings, my 401 keel, early withdrawal, even borrowed against my house. When it collapsed, I was left scrambling to rebuild at 42, starting over in ways I never expected. Then I'll fix it, I told him. He smiled like a man who already owned the result. I know you will. From that day, my life shifted into overdrive. My wife, Sarah, learned not to expect me for dinner because I was always at the plant. You're working yourself to death, she'd say. Standing in the kitchen doorway as I grabbed my coffee at 5:30 a.m., it's temporary. This promotion changes everything for us. She'd nod, but I could see the concern in her eyes. We'd been through too much uncertainty already. My brother called one Saturday afternoon while I was reviewing quality metrics at the kitchen table. You sound exhausted, man. Just working. It's important. More important than family time. I paused, looking at Sarah in the garden through the window. This isn't just about money. It's about proving I can still build something after the startup failed. Important was an understatement. The Phoenix line was a disaster. Tolerances all wrong, outdated CNC programs, quality control that barely existed. The previous engineer had left a mess of half-documented processes and jury-rigged solutions that somehow passed inspection but failed under real production pressure. Twice the whole thing almost collapsed. Once because a supplier delivered the wrong aluminum grade, 7,075 instead of 6,061. The parts looked identical until we ran stress tests and watched $45,000 worth of components crack under load. Once because someone loaded the wrong G-code and nearly scrapped an entire batch of wing brackets that take 8 hours each to machine. Both times, Harvey called me at 6 a.m. Scott, fix this, he demanded, like I was the only person in Cleveland capable of holding it together. I did fix it. I rewrote the CNC programs line by line, checking every feed rate and spindle speed. I established proper quality checkpoints with documented procedures that even temp workers could follow. I talked down a Boeing inspector who showed up unannounced and threatened to pull the contract when he found inconsistencies in our previous reports. "Your documentation is incomplete," he said, flipping through our quality logs. "These signatures don't match your employee records, and your measurement protocols aren't standardized." I spent 14 hours straight rebuilding the entire quality system while he waited. When I finished, he looked surprised. "This is actually better than what most shops maintain." "Who set this up?" "I did." He made notes in his tablet, "Make sure this stays consistent." When the crisis passed, Harvey walked into the production meeting and announced, "We stayed on schedule thanks to strong leadership." He didn't look in my direction once. Afterward, I confronted him in his office. "You could have acknowledged what actually happened." He waved his hand dismissively. "Everyone knows you're reliable. You'll get your moment," and I believed him. Every 12-hour shift, every weekend I spent programming, every fire I put out, I tied all of it to the future he promised me. The future I thought was waiting until it wasn't. The work consumed me in ways I hadn't expected. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. thinking about feed rates and tool wear. Sarah would find me at the kitchen table at midnight, sketching out process flows on napkins. "You're obsessing," she'd say gently. "I'm being thorough." This has to be perfect. Nothing has to be that perfect. But she was wrong. In aerospace manufacturing, perfection isn't optional. One deviation, one shortcut, one moment of carelessness, and people die. The brackets I was machining would hold wings onto aircraft. The tolerances I was setting would determine whether families made it home safely. Harvey might not understand that weight, but I felt it every day. By month 6, I'd transformed the Phoenix line completely. What had been a chaotic mess became a model of efficiency. I implemented lean manufacturing principles, eliminated bottlenecks, and reduced waste by 35%. The quality metrics spoke for themselves. 0 defects across 3,000 parts, 99.7% on-time delivery, and client satisfaction scores that Boeing had never seen from a subcontractor. Every part hit specification. Every delivery landed early. Every inspection passed without question. When Boeing's quality director called, she asked for me by name. "Scott, you saved this rollout. We've never seen a turnaround this clean. I'm sending a formal commendation to your management." I felt something settle in my chest. "Thank you. That means more than you know. We're recommending Precision Dynamics for additional contracts based on your work. This could be worth millions to your company." The letter arrived 2 days later. Harvey opened it before I saw it. "Good work," he said, waving the page casually. "I'll include this in our quarterly report." I reached for the letter, but he folded it and slipped it under his other documents. "Harvey, I'd like a copy of that." "I'll forward it," he said, already turning toward his office. He did forward it, eventually. But when I walked past the conference room and saw him reviewing his quarterly presentation, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. My processes, my improvements, my innovations were woven into paragraphs under management achievements. My methodologies were described as strategic initiatives. My problem-solving was labeled as departmental optimization. My name appeared once buried in a footnote as project contributor. I stepped inside. "You're presenting my work as your own." He didn't look up from his laptop. "I'm presenting the department's work. Don't get hung up on details. It's not details. It's credit." He exhaled sharply, closing the laptop. "Scott, please. The promotion discussion is coming soon. Everything will make sense then." I wanted to believe him. For weeks, co-workers had been nudging me with knowing looks. Tom from quality control pulled me aside one afternoon. "You're next," he said quietly. "Everyone knows it." "Harvey can't ignore what you've done." Lisa from production planning agreed. "I've never seen anything like what you did with Phoenix. If they don't promote you, they're idiots." Even the machinists who usually kept to themselves started treating me differently. They'd nod respectfully when I walked through their area, ask my opinion on process improvements, treat me like someone who already had the title. On the morning of the department meeting, several engineers stopped by my workstation. "Good luck today," one said. "You earned this." I adjusted my watch band, feeling the familiar weight of anticipation. "Thanks. I'm ready." I was ready. I had spreadsheets full of metrics proving my impact. I had documentation of every improvement I'd made. I had client testimonials and quality certifications. When I walked into that meeting, I thought I knew what was coming. I thought excellence would finally be enough. Harvey stood at the front with his usual rehearsed confidence. The entire engineering department was there, 24 people crammed into a conference room meant for 12. He'd called it an important announcement, and the energy was electric. Before we begin, he said, I want to recognize someone who'll be stepping into a crucial leadership role. I straightened in my chair, conscious of everyone's eyes on me. This was it. 10 months of 60-hour weeks, countless weekends, endless problem solving. It was finally paying off. Rachel Torres will be our new engineering supervisor. The words hit like a physical blow. A murmur swept through the room, confusion, discomfort, disbelief. Rachel, who had joined Precision Dynamics 3 months earlier, blinked like she needed a second to understand what she'd heard. She stood up slowly, smoothing her blazer with nervous hands. Thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to work closely with the Phoenix systems and all the manufacturing deliverables. I've been reading up on the CNC metrics, and I think there's a lot of potential for process synergy and cross-functional optimization. Someone coughed. An engineer stared at his shoes. She was using buzzwords she clearly didn't understand, mixing terminology from different departments. She didn't know the difference between CNC programming and quality control. She couldn't distinguish between manufacturing deliverables and engineering specifications. Yet she kept talking, unaware of the awkwardness filling the room. I'm looking forward to leveraging our core competencies to drive sustainable growth in the aerospace vertical. She continued, reading from notes on her phone. When she finished, Harvey led the applause with forced enthusiasm. He looked proud of her, proud of himself, proud of a decision that made no sense to anyone else in the room. My hands stayed still. The room emptied quickly after the meeting, people avoiding eye contact as they filed out. But 2 veteran machinists approached me quietly in the hallway. Scott, one said, "That should have been you. Everyone knows." The second nodded grimly. "We're sorry. This is wrong." I forced a smile that felt like plastic. Thanks for saying that. Their words should have been comforting, but they only made the betrayal sharper. If everyone could see what Harvey refused to acknowledge, then his decision wasn't about competence or qualifications. It was about something else entirely. Harvey intercepted me before I could leave the building. "Scott," he said, placing a hand briefly on my arm, "be a team player. Help guide her, okay?" "She's still adjusting." "Adjusting to what?" I asked. He lowered his voice, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Don't make this difficult. Rachel has strong support from headquarters. You understand how these things work." I stared at him. He didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He acted like nothing had been promised. Nothing had been taken. Nothing had been lost. Behind him, Rachel gave me a bright smile, unaware of anything except her new title. The humiliation settled deep, quiet, and sharp, deeper than anger ever could. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes before driving home. The steering wheel felt cold under my hands. The familiar weight of my toolbox and the back seat seemed heavier somehow. I'd built my entire career on the belief that good work speaks for itself, that competence wins, that promises made by managers actually mean something. I was wrong. Sarah knew something was off the moment I walked through the door. "How did it go?" she asked. Looking up from her laptop, I set my keys on the counter harder than necessary. Rachel Torres got the promotion. She blinked. Who's Rachel Torres? Someone who started 3 months ago and doesn't know the difference between a tolerance and a specification. Sarah closed her laptop slowly. "I'm sorry, that's horrible. I documented everything, every improvement, every success metric, every client testimonial. None of it mattered." She stood up and put her arms around me. For a moment, I let myself lean into the comfort, but even her embrace couldn't touch the cold anger settling in my chest. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I don't know yet, but I did know. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. The next morning, I found Harvey alone in his office after the shift meeting. Shuffling papers like burying himself in work might erase what he'd done. "Harvey," I said, closing the door behind me. "We need to talk." He didn't look up. "If this is about Rachel, let it go. Company needs shifted." I stepped closer to his desk. "You promised me that position. You tied it directly to the Phoenix project." He finally lifted his head, annoyance flickering in his eyes. "I never promised anything formal. We discussed possibilities. That's all. That's not what you said." I reached into my pocket and placed my phone on his desk. "I saved every email, including the one where you wrote, 'Fix Phoenix with 0 defects and the supervisor position is yours.'" Harvey stared at the screen as I pulled up the message. His jaw tightened as he read his own words. "I don't recall the context of that email. I let out a slow breath. It's your email, Harvey. Your signature. Your promise. He pushed the phone away with 2 fingers like the truth physically irritated him. You're being emotional. You need to take pride in being indispensable. The best teams rely on people like you. People like me? Yes, he said, his voice taking on a condescending tone, reliable, consistent, low maintenance. That's why this reaction is so out of character. You're making something small into something dramatic. The words hit like a slap. Low maintenance. Like I was a piece of equipment that required minimal attention. I worked nights and weekends for a project you said would define my future. And it did. He snapped, finally showing real emotion. Your performance puts you in a strong position here. You shouldn't jeopardize that over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I said quietly. You never intended to follow through. He opened his mouth to argue, but no defense came out. Only the realization that I had finally seen him clearly. The mask had slipped, and underneath was just another corporate climber who'd learned that other people's work was easier to steal than create. For the first time in months, the last bridge between us didn't feel worth crossing. I went home that night and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. Sarah watched from the doorway as I made 2 columns, stay and leave. Under stay, I wrote steady paycheck, known environment, 15 years of seniority. Under leave, I wrote self-respect, unknown opportunities, chance to start over. The leave column was shorter, but every item carried more weight. You're really thinking about quitting, Sarah asked. I'm thinking about what I'm worth. She sat down across from me. We'll be okay financially. My job covers the basics, and we've got savings. I looked at her, surprised. You think I should leave? I think you've been miserable for months, and it's only going to get worse. You can't work for someone who treats you like that. Her support meant everything. But it also made the decision scarier. If I failed again, it wouldn't just be my career on the line. It would be our stability, our future, our ability to recover from the startup disaster. I wrote the resignation the next morning in under 2 minutes. 2 lines, clear, final, no emotion. When I printed it, the paper felt lighter than it should have, like the weight I'd been carrying had already started to lift. The hardest part wasn't writing it. The hardest part was walking into Harvey's office and watching his world collapse in real time. Harvey was on the phone when I stepped inside, gesturing animatedly as he talked to someone about delivery schedules. He held up a finger, signaling me to wait. I didn't. I placed the letter in front of him and stepped back. He ended the call mid-sentence. What's this? My resignation, I said, keeping my voice even. Effective immediately. Good luck, Harvey. The words hit harder than any argument could have. He blinked rapidly, like he needed time to process a reality he never expected. Scott, stop. You're not doing this. You're upset. Sit down. No, I said simply. He tore the letter open with shaking hands, eyes darting across the page. This is ridiculous. You don't quit over one decision. It wasn't one decision, I said. It was every decision that led here. His denial came fast and desperate. You're overreacting. We can fix this. I can adjust responsibilities. Maybe create a senior engineer role with oversight duties. No. He pushed back from his desk so abruptly his chair hit the cabinet behind him. You can't walk out. You're essential to Phoenix. Rachel's nowhere near ready. Boeing depends on you. That sounds like your problem, not mine. Panic flashed across his face then, sharp and unfiltered. Scott, be reasonable. Think about your future. Think about stability. No other firm will hire someone who quits under pressure. There it was, the intimidation, the last card he thought he could play, the threat designed to make me crawl back, accept less, settle for being undervalued. I stepped toward the door. I'm not the one under pressure, Harvey. His voice rose, anger replacing fear. If you leave, don't expect a reference from me. You're burning your own career? I think I'll be fine. He stood there gripping the paper, breathing hard, like he finally understood what he'd lost. I turned and walked out without waiting for anything else. For the first time in years, my mind felt quiet, clear, free. Behind me, Harvey's voice didn't follow. His panic stayed in that room, and I left it there. I'd been gone only 4 days when the first message reached me. It was from Rachel. Scott, do you have a second? I'm trying to interpret a tolerance specification, and I think I'm reading it wrong. I stared at the screen. She'd been given a role she never earned, and now she was drowning in responsibilities she didn't understand. I typed back, I can't assist. You need to speak with Harvey or the lead engineer. Not even an hour later, a second message arrived, this time from Boeing. Scott, we've noticed several delays and conflicting updates. Can you clarify what's happening on Precision's end? I read the message twice before replying. I'm no longer with Precision Dynamics. You'll need to contact their current supervisor. A pause. Then, that explains a lot. By that afternoon, my LinkedIn inbox began filling with quiet, almost desperate notes. A machinist, things are going sideways. Nobody knows who's responsible for what anymore. A scheduler, Harvey keeps snapping at people. He says everything's under control, but nothing is. A quality engineer. Rachel asked me what a deviation report is. I thought she was joking. I didn't respond to any of them. I wouldn't be pulled back into a place that had already taken so much. The next morning, another message came, this one from the vice president, who once praised Harvey's leadership. Scott, I need to verify something. Were you the primary engineer on Phoenix? I typed back carefully. Yes, I managed all processes and client communication for its entire duration. She replied, thank you. That aligns with what we're uncovering. The word lingered in my mind for hours. A week later, someone from Precision called but hung up before voicemail started. Another crack in Harvey's facade. He was still trying to make the lie hold, but the weight of everything he'd built on my work was beginning to break loose, piece by piece. The call that changed everything came on a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after I left Precision Dynamics. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Is this Scott Henderson? A calm voice asked. Yes, it is. My name is Gordon Walsh, director at TechForge Industries. We were given your name by Boeing, who spoke very highly of your leadership on the Phoenix project. I sank into my kitchen chair, Sarah looking up from her coffee with curiosity. I appreciate that. I'm no longer with Precision. That's exactly why I'm calling, he said. We have an opening for an engineering manager, real authority, autonomy, and fair compensation. I'd like to discuss it with you if you're open. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. You want an interview? No, Gordon said with a slight laugh. I want you. Boeing said you carried work worth $500,000 without a single deviation. They also mentioned some recent management issues at your former employer. People like you don't appear often. The directness stunned me. I couldn't speak. He continued, if you're interested, we'd like to bring you in this week. I believe you'll find TechForge different from where you came from. After we set a time, I stared at Sarah across the table. She was grinning. What? I asked. You look surprised that someone recognizes your worth. She was right. I'd gotten so used to Harvey's manipulation that genuine appreciation felt foreign. During the interview at TechForge, Gordon asked one question that cut straight through me. What do you need in order to thrive? No one at Precision had ever asked me anything like that. I thought for a moment, then gave him the honest answer. Respect for my expertise, clear expectations, and leadership that keeps its promises. He nodded. That's what we do here. By the end of the afternoon, they offered me the position. The salary was 25% higher than what I'd made at Precision, with full authority over a team of 12 engineers and direct client relationships. I accept, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. My first week at TechForge passed without a single emergency call. No late-night texts, no sudden crises, no dread creeping into Sunday evenings. I felt like a person again, not a patch for everyone else's mistakes. But peace never lasts long when the past still has loose ends. 4 months into my new role at TechForge, I received an email from an unfamiliar address at Precision Dynamics. The subject line read, Internal Audit Inquiry. I almost deleted it, but something told me to open it. Mr. Henderson, the message began. We are reviewing several inconsistencies in quarterly reports tied to the Phoenix project. Your name appears repeatedly in our documentation. We request a brief call. I replied with a time, expecting a tense conversation. Instead, the auditor, a man named Vincent Cruz, sounded almost relieved when I answered. Thank you for speaking with me, he said. We found mismatched data in Mr. Coleman's submissions. We need to confirm who managed specific workflows. I managed all of them, I said. Every process improvement, every supplier correction, every quality issue. Vincent paused. That helps clarify a lot. What exactly is happening? I asked. He exhaled slowly. Harvey reported inflated metrics, shifted timelines to protect his own numbers, and listed several innovations under his leadership. But the supporting documentation points to you. Boeing has also provided their own assessment that contradicts Harvey's claims. I kept my voice calm. I can provide full records if needed. Please do, he said. Your transparency will be critical to this review. I spent the evening organizing files, emails, logs, process sheets, quality reports, nothing rewritten, nothing embellished, just the truth. 2 days later, Vincent called back. The board has been informed, he said, and there's something else. Rachel admitted she was placed in the supervisor role due to pressure from headquarters without proper qualifications. This opens another layer of review. I leaned back in my chair. I had no part in any of that. We know, he replied. Harvey will be facing formal hearings. I ended the call feeling neither vindicated nor angry, just settled. Harvey had built a career on borrowed credit, and now the debts were coming due. The final update from Precision arrived on a Monday morning, tucked between routine emails about project schedules and supplier quotes. I opened it without emotion, the way you might open a letter from a life you no longer belong to. The message was brief. Harvey Coleman has been terminated following confirmed fraudulent reporting. He is prohibited from holding engineering leadership positions for 5 years. Gordon, my director at TechForge, noticed the way I stopped typing. Everything all right? Yes, I said, just closure. At TechForge, I stepped into a role leading a multi-million-dollar engineering program. My team listened, respected the work, and treated me like someone who belonged at the helm, not in the shadows. When I walked out of Precision, I did it because a broken promise tried to break me. Walking away was the first promise I ever kept to myself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back, it's building something better and letting incompetence expose itself.